Welcome to the Inside Out Money Podcast.
Can't even recognize this place. Too many pieces of our past mistakes.
Hi, I'm Maggie, and I believe real change starts from the inside out. So let's work together to improve our money and our lives from the inside out. We will explore all things money and our relationship with it. Join me each week with a rotating set of co-hosts, friends, and interviews. Let's jump in.
It's time, we going round and round and round and round and round.
Hi, Greg.
Hey, Maggie.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, happy 2025.
Yeah. So, in the spirit of getting shit done this year, we are going to jump right in to today's episode. If you don't know where you're at, you were listening to the Inside Out Money Podcast. This is a personal finance podcast focused on redefining wealth from the inside out. Every week, I speak with a rotating set of co-hosts about a different financial topic to help you improve your financial mindset and tactics. And today, we have got co-host Greg, also known as my husband, and we are going to talk all about financial wellness and get you motivated for a year focused on financial wellness. Yeah?
We are. That's what we're going to do. January is Financial Wellness Month.
I did not know that.
I didn't either until you told me that. Yeah. But, typically in January, people focus on many various New Year's resolutions. A lot are around fitness. I always read these stats that gym memberships increase dramatically in January.
And attendance. Like all of a sudden, if you go to the gym all year, it's like all of a sudden the gym's busy in January and you had the place to yourself in December.
And that's all great. And that is very good. Fitness is obviously a very important thing and just health and wellness. But we could also use some of that momentum at the beginning of the year around finance, increasing our financial wellness throughout the new year.
Yeah, I like it. And it doesn't have to be a new year. So if you're listening to this in March or May or December or whenever, we're recording this in January. And there is a lot to be said for how psychologically powerful a new year can be. And I think, it is for me. Like I get a little bit of a reset and some energy, and I'm not sure why, but it's a marked time and it kind of works for me. But research actually shows you can do this anytime.
Yeah,
right?
if you're hearing this in March, don't use this as an excuse to say, well,
I'll
start next January.
I'll wait till next January. Exactly. So we actually recorded our very first episode on this podcast. So I used to have a podcast called Friends on Fire, and then it retired after 3 years, and I started this podcast, Inside Out Money. And our very first episode, Greg, it was with you, right? Yes.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember it was with you. Very memorable, clearly. And it was called The Fresh Start Effect. So I'd recommend you go listen to that if you want a little more some extra like stats and motivation and other things for like the idea that you can have a fresh start at any time. You can decide it's going to be tomorrow, next week, whenever you want. It doesn't have to be January 1st of a new year. But we do happen to be recording this ourselves on, what is today, Greg? It's January 3rd. Yeah.
So let's kick off the year with a discussion about financial wellness. And at some point later in this episode, too, we'll share a little bit about our goals and what we are doing around our own financial wellness. But first, I want to talk a little bit more about what financial wellness means.
Yeah. And what do you think of when you hear financial wellness, Greg?
Yeah. Well, I think of general wellness, but tie it to finance. But to be more specific, at its core, it really means managing your money in a way that promotes stability and helps you achieve your goals while kind of minimizing your stress about it at the same time. In essence, taking control and exerting agency over your financial life.
Yeah, I love the term agency. Just the idea that you do have control over a lot of things. And while I was just asking you that, I actually Googled the definition of wellness because I sometimes just like looking at like the original word and what it means. Wellness is the act of practicing healthy habits on a daily basis to attain better, in this case it says physical or mental health outcomes, but I'd add financial outcomes, so that instead of just surviving, you're thriving. I love that definition.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly with finance. You want to be at a point where you're thriving, or at least building towards thriving, as opposed to just getting by
just surviving.
Right.
Yeah, like no one's goal. I don't think most people's goal in life is to just survive. And I'm not saying many people aren't in a situation where their current circumstances make it so that they don't have a lot of choice about just surviving. But I think their goal is always to get to a place of thriving. I put it this way, if you could choose between surviving and thriving, I think 100 out of 100, we'd all choose thriving. Exactly. I think a big piece of wellness too is really making sure that what you actually are doing financially aligns with your values and seeking some level of balance, right? So, I mean, even just talking to the like surviving versus thriving, you know, you might be somewhere in the middle. You might constantly be making, you know, different trade-offs and different things and finding a little bit more confidence and getting to a better place of feeling like you've got some level of financial security and all that. And I thought an interesting stat, which did not really surprise me, was that less than half of us feel like we are doing, quote, financially well at any given time. So 47% of people feel financially well. Like, good for you if you're in that position. But the majority, or by a slight majority, 53% of people, this episode might be super helpful to you. And, you know, if you don't feel like you're financially well, I hope this discussion will help be one of the pieces of momentum to kind of get you started this year. Because we want to focus all of this episode, starting right now, by the way, on actionable steps to improve your journey towards achieving financial wellness. And again, moving from a state of surviving to thriving.
So we do that by setting goals and making a plan.
I heard a really cool quote today, actually, Greg, that a goal without a plan is just a wish.
Yeah, I like that. I think that is makes sense.
I mean, I do often talk about setting goals and using that terminology or even intentions, and I forget to do the next. I just sort of naturally am fairly motivated, but if you're not, the most important piece is making a plan of how you're going to achieve those goals.
Yeah, because if you don't, I think goals can be almost discouraging if you set goals but don't really have a plan on how to achieve them. And another thing I always think with goals is just setting achievable goals too. I think, you know, it's great to kind of think, you know, maybe envision what you want way down the road, but set goals and milestones that are achievable, because it really creates a feeling of accomplishment when you are able to hit those along the way.
Another thing I would say is, you know, aligned to what you were just saying, Greg, I would suggest you give yourself some grace and understanding for where you're at now. There's not a lot of value in dwelling on the past. Like, you can learn a lot from the past, certainly, but move on, right? That is the past. Focus on the future, look forward, and just try not to expend too much energy worrying about what has happened historically or how you got in debt or how you got there. Certainly, again, if you want to get some learnings from it, that's one thing. But to give it the power to like take away your agency and control, I think is where I would really caution people to make sure that you take your own agency, recognize you have agency over your finances, and you have control, not over everything, but over many things, certainly most of your day-to-day decisions, and use that reminder and energy and confidence to think about what goals you want to set and the plan you want to make. And, you know, I think this is probably the most helpful piece of this entire episode right now, what we're about to talk about. And it's a couple like very actionable examples that I want to give. They're using the framework that is in the book Atomic Habits. So, you know, have you read that book, Greg?
No.
Oh, it's such a good book. I feel like you would really like it.
I think I've skimmed some of it, but I don't think I've ever fully read it.
So it's by James Clear. It was like really, really famous years ago. I can't even remember what year it was written. I know it was written when I was still working.
Is it the one with the merry-go-round on it? Or the Ferris wheel?
No.
Okay.
I wonder what that is.
The Power of Habit or something.
Could have been. No, it has like the word atomic habits in gold, and they're like there's glitter
atoms or something.
Yeah, like glitter above them or something. I don't know, something, but like a live habit or something. So it's a really good book. Would highly recommend it. I'll put a link in the show notes to it. But James Clear gives this framework for behavior change. He actually calls it the 4 laws of behavior change. And he says that these will help you create better habits. And they are: make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. So the idea is that if you apply these principles, you will be able to form habits that stick and contribute to your goals. And so I want to give a couple of financial examples. And again, like this is the part, if there's like one part where you sort of are like listening and you kind of, your mind's wandering off, like bring it back. Because this is the part to me that can be really helpful as you think about not just setting goals, but making a plan for how you're going to meet those goals in this year or whenever you're listening to this. So one example would be, let's say you want to spend less money this year, which, Greg, that happens to be one of our goals, right? We're about to have our expense review episode next week with all of the co-hosts, and you'll hear more about why we want to spend less money in 2025. But so taking James Clear's framework from Atomic Habits, you could make it obvious by tracking your expenses visibly. So we use Monarch as an example. So you could use like an app or a chart on your fridge, whatever you want. Make it attractive by rewarding yourself for different savings milestones. And I don't want to get off on a tangent, but be careful about your rewards always being spending more money, because that it could be that you get something small as a reward.
Yeah, you don't want to undo everything you've just done.
You don't get an expensive reward, but you get a little something that makes you happy. Make it easy by setting up automatic transfers to your savings account. That would be an example. And then the final thing is make it satisfying by celebrating your progress. So that could perhaps be like a visual savings tracker that's on your fridge where you show that you're meeting your budget goal each month and that you haven't spent over what you had set as your budget. And so that's one example. Another example might be, you want to cut down on impulse purchases. So using that same framework of make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. Here's what you could do, right? You could make it obvious by leaving yourself reminders on your bathroom mirror, on your fridge, saying, stop buying shit. Oh, we actually have a sticker that says, stop buying shit. We have one that says, stop buying shit, and stop buying shit, go for a hike instead. I sell them on Etsy for $3, which pretty much just pays for the sticker and shipping. But if you're really not in a good financial position, just DM me and I will send you one for free. Or you can go buy one on my Etsy store. Okay, so put reminders places. It could even be, another thing is like, remove Amazon from your phone, right? That could be a way to like help make the idea of impulse purchases more obvious. You could make it attractive by thinking of the long-term satisfaction that your savings will bring. So like visualize what the end goal is of what you're going to be able to afford if you spend less on impulse purchases. So that could be a vacation that you're saving up for. It could be money that you want to put into your brokerage account at the end of the month, whatever it might be. Make it easy by, I like this tip. So removing saved credit card information from online stores. I just heard this example in something that I was listening to the other day too. The goal is to add a little more friction to the buying process. So if it requires you every time you make a purchase to go get up, physically get your credit card and put it into Amazon or put it into, Target or whatever app you're in or whatever website you're on, it might stop the immediate impulse.
Yeah, and even that 45-second walk to get your credit card might be the time you need to just say like, whoa, I don't need this, or I don't need it now. Let me just let this sit, and if I really need it 24 hours from now, I'll reconsider it. But hopefully by then I'll have moved on.
Yeah. Because, I don't want to get up and get a credit card. Like, again, a little bit of friction. And then also, like I said earlier, it could be removing apps from your phone, things like that, again, to make it a little bit harder to just go do that stuff really quickly. And man, Apple Pay is so easy. There's too many things that take Apple Pay lately. So it might even be a rule that you're not allowed to use Apple Pay. If you really want the thing, you have to do the harder process to buy it. And again, that certainly will make me think twice. And so, put some rules in place like that for yourself. The final law, again, is make it satisfying. So again, trying to use financial examples here, making a tracking chart that you keep up on your bathroom mirror or on your phone or your fridge or somewhere, use a habit tracking app where you get to check off every day that you didn't make any impulse purchases. Like that to me, what works for you, but like that to me is very satisfying. Those are a couple examples. And I just really wanted to like take that Atomic Habits framework that James Clear created and try to apply it to some financial examples. Because I think, again, people often like think about eating healthier or stuff like that, but you can take all those same principles and apply it to financial wellness, which is really what we want to encourage you guys to do this month and forever, really. Yeah,
those are great examples you gave, and I think a really helpful framework for achieving any of the goals you set out. Another thing that will likely improve your financial wellness in the new year is budgeting and saving. And so without doing a really deep dive, wanted to touch on that. anyone who has listened to our podcast before knows that we are very big on tracking expenses because it is really hard to change your behavior unless you know what your current behavior is. And tracking expenses is such an important way to do that. So hopefully that's something you've been doing. If not, there's no time like the present to start.
Yeah.
There's many tools out there. We love Monarch. Ultimately, whatever tool works the best for you and is accessible for you, it's important to track that. And then set some rough budgets. And I think budgeting can be a little overwhelming for some people, but you don't have to, it doesn't have to be too complicated. It could be when you do some expense tracking, you realize, wow, I spend a lot of money on clothes, or I spend a lot of money on entertainment. And your budget may just say, I'm going to take those 2 or 3 categories that seem out of whack and I'm going to spend less. So your budget might not be a huge budget of every dollar you spend. It may just be the 2 or 3 areas that you know you're a little loose in, and saying, I'm going to bring down my spend by X dollars every month and tracking that.
We often talk about budgeting and expense tracking. They're two different things, two different sides of the same coin, I would say. If the idea of budgeting is overwhelming to you, then do expense tracking, which is what we do, right? We kind of do some version of budgeting, but like we do not budget in the spirit of what budgeting is meant for. We mostly track our expenses and then look at where we are at and have a much more thoughtful and intentional view of what we spend and how we feel about it and how we want to adjust that in the future. And so I would just encourage people, if the idea of budgeting is overwhelming, then don't put that term on it and don't do it that way. Just do expense tracking so you have an idea where your money is going. And then that might lead you to want to implement some budgets because you might see, oh, wow, I'm spending way more than I thought eating out. I'm going to put a budget on myself for eating out.
That's a great point. Well said. And then once you start expense tracking and reducing your expenses and hopefully getting more cash flow positive, meaning your income exceeds your expenses, you can start doing things like paying off debt. You always want to start with your highest interest debt because that is the debt that is costing you the most. Credit cards usually tick that box, as well as certain other types of loans. Start paying that down quickly because usually that high interest debt is higher interest than you can earn in the market. Things like mortgages, you're probably actually earning more when you invest that money, whereas credit cards are pretty much always costing you more than you can make if you took that same money and invested it.
It's also just like in the spirit of the idea of financial wellness, it is really, really hard to be financially well when you have high interest debt. And I consider pretty much everything minus student loans and your mortgage high interest debt. Even if you have a solid interest rate on something else, it's often a car, a home improvement, something that was discretionary, right? And so you really do want to be in a position where you have as little debt as possible on the road to trying to become financially well. And again, thriving, not surviving. And then the other thing you want to do, we're kind of doing this list, I'd say, a bit in order of operations, but some of it's debatable based on the reality of your financial situation. Once you have paid off a lot of your high interest debt, which by the way, Greg, we have not really done a lot of episodes on Friends on Fire or Inside Out Money on paying off debt. It's just because it's a topic that's like less top of mind. But we should. One of my goals this year is to do an episode on debt, which was my point. Once you feel like you're in a pretty good position with your debt, that's when you really want to start investing. And again, you don't need to wait until you've paid off all your debt. But these two I'd put kind of, at side by side to some extent. You're having to balance the two. But investing is really how you are going to build wealth. We have a ton of episodes on how to get started investing, so I'm not going to get into that in this episode because this really is meant to be a bit of a teaser to give you a bit of a list of what to think about as you're trying to become more financially well this year. I will put a link in the show notes to a bunch of the investing episodes. A lot of them are with Andrew and I, one of the co-hosts, Andrew. But you really want to focus on you should definitely be investing in your 401k or 403b or whatever your employer offers up to the company match. That is the bare minimum. That's free money your company's putting on the table. And then the next best thing is maxing it out up to the IRS annual limit, which is significantly higher than what most companies will match. And in 2025, the IRS limit is $23,500. That's up $500 from the $23,000 limit in 2024. There's a huge tax benefit in terms of reducing the taxes you're paying and putting money into a investment account that's going to grow over time and build wealth through compound interest. You really want to try to max out your 401k. It's one of the best financial things you can do, and you want to do it as young as you can because you wanted to have more time in the market. Then if you're eligible to invest in a Roth IRA outside of your employer, you should definitely do that. Otherwise, perhaps a regular IRA up to the annual limit. And then after that, just a regular brokerage account. You don't need a financial planner. We've got a bunch of episodes. I'll put them in the show notes about why you don't need a financial planner, how to do this yourself. You really just want to invest in low-cost total market index funds.
Another great tip that helps with both of those topics is really automating if you can. That may be things like automatic investments in your 401k at work, automatically moving money into your savings account. The more you can automate things, it just happens in the background, and you will save more money and you will invest more money when it's automated as opposed to having to remember to go think about it. It takes the guesswork. It takes anything about timing out of it. It just happens in the background. And before you know it, a couple of years will go by and you will look at those savings and investment accounts and the debts that are down and everything else that is up, and you'll be shocked at how much progress you've made when you just set it and forget it.
I have automatic stock buys. So once every 2 weeks in my Fidelity account, I buy $500 worth of VTI shares. The money comes out of my Wealthfront high yield savings account and moves to my Fidelity account and purchases $500 worth of VTI every 2 weeks. I get a little notification on my phone. I get a nice hit of dopamine every time I see it. I don't have to do anything to initiate it. I can turn it off whenever I want. I can up it whenever I want. One recommendation might actually be to consider upping them. So if you already have something like that, like I should go do that right now, Greg. I should up mine from $500 to $750 because I could afford to, and I probably won't notice the difference.
Yeah, and even if it's just a $50 increase,
yeah,
you just make those little tweaks
Yeah.
that sometimes you feel like, oh, am I going to miss that extra $25 every couple of weeks? And you won't. And even though it's not a lot of money, when that is happening regularly and then that money is then compounding, it makes a big difference in the long run. So just, get in there and turn it up just a little bit.
Yeah, automation is just it's just a great way to like idiot proof things. You don't have to think about it. You're making good decisions without having to think about it. Wouldn't it be nice if we could like automate eating healthy or, automate, I haven't taken my vitamins tonight. I mean, being serious, I forgot to take my vitamins. But like, wouldn't it be great if I could just automate that? I kind of do because Greg reminds me most nights.
Yeah.
But then I have to still
forget. But
yeah, which, no offense, Greg, but you forgot tonight. So
I did.
We'll figure out how to automate Greg. Okay, another one that I think is very helpful, and here's where I'd say we're getting out of the order of operations. These are not sequential anymore, is make an educational plan for yourself this year. So when you think about wanting to become more financially well this year, make a plan for how you are going to improve what you know and your level of financial literacy and knowledge to make yourself more financially well than you were, last year or yesterday. So this could be committing to podcasts that you're going to listen to. It could be this podcast. If you don't like this podcast, go find some other podcasts that you do like in the financial space. There's so many to choose from. It could be that you want to hire a financial coach. It could be, which by the way, if you want to hire a financial coach, Nectarine is a good resource. It is a site that matches you up with somebody. Myself and Andrew do a little bit of financial coaching on the side. So you could reach out to one of us also, or you could go to this Nectarine site and find all sorts of different kind of certified financial planners and or coaches that you pay hourly. They are not fee-based, which I would never recommend you hire a financial planner that charges you a percentage or a commission. And we have entire episodes where we talk about that we'll put in a link in the show notes too. It could be some books you want to read. So Andrew and I are big fans of A Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. I'll put some link in the show notes to those. But whatever you need to do to fill in some gaps in your financial education and literacy, because the more that you learn, the more confident you will be and the better you'll be able to make informed decisions. And if you just know that you are not going to do this, that like you won't read books, you won't listen to very many podcasts, you just don't have the time or the interest or whatever it is, like that is, I mean, as much as I encourage you to like rethink that, it might be okay, right? Like this is not going to be like everybody's jam. Hire someone to help you. So I'm not even saying hire me, by the way. I'm early retired. I have very limited time. I like my free time, but I do work with some people, and I work with a couple people, like one in particular, some people I really love, and they don't want to do anything. They want someone to like sit there. It's just not their jam, right? And they know it and they admit it. And they want someone to like sit there and help them transfer their accounts and like physically do the stuff for them, or they're not going to do it. And they know enough to know that about themselves. So to them, it's worth it to pay somebody a few $100s to just like knock out this crap for them. And so if you know that's you, don't make an educational plan. Make a plan to go hire whoever you want to hire to help you do this stuff, because the earlier you do this stuff to get your finances in a good position, the better. And I'm just going to give an example, but if you've been thinking for years, like, oh, I have no idea what my 401k is invested in. It's probably in a target date fund, which by the way, I don't recommend. The quick answer is it's higher fees and it is a subpar performance historically. And we answer what, we give a little bit more about this in a specific episode. I'll put a link in the show notes to it. If you've been thinking about how you know that's something you need to deal with, like looking at what your 401k is invested in and making sure it's right, make a plan for how you're going to do that this year, right? Again, whether it's yourself and like blocking the time on your calendar, or you need to go read a book or listen to a podcast or read an article about how to do it, or whether you need to hire someone to help you, right? Just make a plan. And even if you aren't ready to make a plan right this moment, go schedule an hour on your calendar for a week from now or for tomorrow when you have the physical and mental time and energy to go make that plan. So do the thing you need to do to figure out the next step. And that's probably, one of the biggest things I want to leave people with is like, don't leave this episode being like, oh, one day I'll do this, because things don't just happen. You need to set aside the time to make all of this happen.
Yeah, one day will never come unless you make a plan to do it.
Yeah, agreed.
One of the last tips we'll leave you with for improving your financial wellness this year is to track your progress. It's always really critical. We talked about understanding your baseline, but then tracking your progress is so important. So hopefully you're going to track your spending and you're going to see your spending come down. At the end of the day, the biggest thing that you want to track is your net worth. Your net worth is your assets minus your liabilities. So your assets being your investments, your property, anything you own.
Equity in your property.
Equity in your property, exactly.
It could that's your 401k, your savings account, your checking account.
Everything.
Yeah, all of it.
All of it, minus liabilities. So that's any debt, and including your mortgage. And you subtract your liabilities from your assets, and that's your net worth. We track ours monthly. I don't track it monthly too much anymore, but I did for quite a while in the lead up to our early retirement. And it's so critical, because when you're making these sacrifices, you're spending less, and it doesn't feel good sometimes. But when you see that net worth number start to creep up, it feels great, and it puts into perspective why you're doing all of the challenging things that you're doing.
I track mine monthly, religiously, and I haven't always. I only have for the past, 5 or 6 years. So religiously that New Year's Eve at like 2 a.m. before I go to bed, I was tracking my net worth just so I didn't have one less thing to do the next day. And it's really helpful. And many people's will be negative in the beginning, but that's the idea. You want to know where you're at so that you can improve it over time, and it's going to take time. It's just we're big proponents of tracking your net worth, and I think it's less about the specifics of how often you do it, but just that you do it. So I said a minute ago that this stuff isn't just going to happen on its own. You got to like set some time aside to make all of this happen. And we did that very recently ourselves, and we'll share a little bit about what some of our goals are this year. Maybe we'll just focus on the financial ones, because I've got a lot of things I want to do this year, and we'll be here all day if I share them all.
So we recently did some goal setting on a vacation that we took over Christmas week. It was just Maggie and I, and
we were without the kids.
And on the flight out there, Maggie said, we're going to do some goal setting. We're going to take some time to reflect and do some goal setting. And
well, I think before that, Greg, I said that this is actually our Woo-Tuck annual planning retreat. Not a vacation. I was like, just so you know, this is actually like, because we both worked in corporate America for like 20 years and went on all sorts of annual planning sessions and retreats and stuff like that. So I was joking that I was like, this is ours, and we shall be reflecting on this trip.
it was still more of a vacation. But my initial reaction was not, I mean, I was not necessarily excited to spend some of our vacation time.
You hadn't packed templates like I had,
No,
right?
I did not have templates. I had not been thinking about
I packed
this.
pens and templates and
Yeah.
like all sorts of things. Colored pens, like multiple things for you. You're welcome.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it was great though. I enjoyed, Maggie had put out some questions that kind of helped us reflect on the past year. And then we spent some time writing down our goals. And it was great. It really was nice to spend a little time and do that before the start of the year. And then when we got back, we kind of cleaned those goals up that were kind of handwritten and raw at first. And we've refined them a little bit. And it was great. And so I'm really glad we did that. The point is that you're going to need to take a little time to kind of think about this. And, you know, it can be all at once. It can be, you know, if you're really busy, it can just be getting some little blocks of time throughout a week.
Yeah.
But setting aside a little time to kind of reflect and set some goals for yourself and then thinking through how you're going to achieve those goals.
And I would encourage people that you need some alone time, in my opinion. And then you also need some time if you are in a relationship with whoever you're in a relationship with, right? Whether it's a boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, spouse, whoever. And maybe even your kids if they're old enough and you want them to be a part of the process. But so we did ours. And again, we're not going to like share all of them, but I will say Greg had this moment in bed. I remember because you were in bed when you said it. And I don't know what you were just like getting out of bed or something. And you sort of just like randomly were like, oh, mine are already done. And they're like clean, lean, and glean or something. And you busted out those 3 words. And I was like, I hadn't really categorized mine yet. And I love some like categories or some themes.
And I was actually kind of kidding and kind of poking fun at people that do these, you know, little words. Like mine were just
You were poking.
financial goals, health goals. And I'm fine with it being boring. And I was totally kidding. And Maggie goes, wow, those are great. Do you mind if I use them? And I was
they
like,
happen. Yeah.
Sure. I just came up with them on the fly.
He like literally had just made it up. And I was like, oh my God, I love them. So my goals this year are all around Greg's like joking categories of glean, clean, and lean. And my glean is all around extracting information from various sources, collecting gradually, bit by bit. I have these like little definitions. My clean is like free from dirt or unwanted matter, the completeness of an action. A lot of things I want to like clean up in my life, physically and mentally. Lean is being especially healthy and the definition around like having no superfluous fat. And I don't mean like body fat, by the way. I mean like just the concept of like extra in my life. So I just want things to be leaner physically and emotionally and in many ways. Financially is a huge one for that one too. So yeah, we're not going to share all of our goals, but like name a couple of your financial ones, Greg. Well, the one shared one we have actually.
Yeah, so our shared goal is to reduce our spending from 2024. We'll talk more about that in the next episode. But
that's a layup where we didn't even name a specific amount and we spent so much in 2024 that like I think we'd have to be idiots to not meet this one.
Yeah.
I think my point is I think we can do it. Yeah. But it's, you know, it's not a complete layup.
Well, and you know, at this point it's just very broad. As we get into some of the detail of where we overspent in 2024, we'll put some more specific kind of parameters around that, I think.
Yeah.
And my 2 others were just to review and update my investment mix. And then lastly, to be more timely with expense tracking. So again, the importance of it. I've gotten through times in the past year where I've just not been quite as up to date. And guess what? When you don't have up to date information on where your spending is, you can't adjust real time. Yeah. You end up 6 months later saying, whoa, we've been spending a lot more than we thought we were, as opposed to 1 month in saying, wow, we're already kind of spending a lot. Let's really change course here.
Yeah.
So that's my commitment to both of our finances, is that I'm going to be more up to date on that expense tracking and make sure I share it with Maggie in a way that will help us both make meaningful decisions around how we spend our money.
And more like real-time decisions. Because this is not your fault at all, Greg. But to your point, like we track expenses, but you also have to like look at the data on a like let's say every month would be helpful, but even every month, every other month, quarterly, whatever. We too often look at it like twice a year when we record a mid-year and an end-of-year expense review with our co-host on Inside Out Money. And that's not often enough because I kind of knew we were getting like a little loose with our spending. And I kind of kept joking with Greg, like, tell me the number. And I could go look up the number myself also. It just took we have like a lot of categories and like child support and things we get to like pull out of the number to get to a clean number, and just shared expenses and a bunch of things that we've got to kind of, just a little bit of complexity in our finances that we've got to clean up before we can get to the real number. And so Greg's the one that like knows how to do all that and that does it on a more frequent basis. And so I put it on him and I'm like, oh, tell me. And if he doesn't, I just kind of like keep going through blindly, which is my fault. Because if I really sat and looked at him and was like, hey, I need to know, he would tell me, right? Neither one of us really prioritized it. And so, yeah, I had kind of just said, spend less than last year. I agree. A more actionable intention is to just look at our expenses more often, because that by nature will make us spend less than last year.
Agree.
So, and then mine, honestly, most of mine are not financial. A lot of my goals, which I'll share on Instagram in the coming weeks, I'm kind of doing this home warranty experiment, which is financial related, and I'll share some about it in a future podcast once I have more data on it. So that's one that's financial. Again, the spend less one. And then most of mine are more around like kind of organizing and cleaning up my life digitally and physically. And, I want to like use up our travel benefits and gift cards and coupons more often. That's kind of in the financial category. And then a lot of like health related and some inside out money stuff too, around growing the show and just putting a little bit more intentional and thoughtful energy into the show. Okay. I think we can wrap it up. As usual, I hope this discussion was helpful for people. We always appreciate you all listening. We know your time is limited, and we always love it when you choose to spend some of it with us. If you've enjoyed this episode, we love it if you want to leave us a written review on Apple Podcast. We actually have a fun goal to try to get to 200 written reviews by our 100th episode, which would be at like 8 or 9 episodes from this episode. So got like 10 weeks to hit that goal. And I think we're at about 140 something. So we need 60 more reviews, y'all.
Yeah, please. If you've listened and have not done a review yet, please do. Please encourage any other listeners that you know to give a review.
Yeah. Call your mom, ask them to leave a review. We do really, really appreciate it. And just to remind people too, this is a very intentionally ad-free podcast. We do not make any money off of it. So just another reason, if you want to be awesome, to go leave us a review.
We also encourage you to share this podcast or this specific episode with a friend or family member to encourage ongoing discussions about money. And please do subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
That's awesome. And you know what we didn't talk about in this episode, Greg?
What's that?
Accountability buddies, also known as accountability partners. So, the thought of like sharing this episode with a friend or family member, like share it with them and say, hey, let's be each other's accountability partners. Like, let's talk about our intentions with each other, because we do that with a lot of the like podcast co-hosts. And it really does help to have other people in your life that you feel comfortable having financial discussions with. It really is meaningful.
It does. I mean, when we know that twice a year we are going to go through our expenses with our podcast co-hosts, and it's a supportive group, but still, you're going to have to share that. And they're going to say like, wow, was this on purpose or what happened? And if you have a friend or family member that you can do that with, it will change the way you think about some of the financial decisions you make.
And you just get back to the like confidence and agency and control idea. The more you have people you can talk openly on these topics, particularly financial topics in your life, the more helpful it is for everybody. So we'll just leave you on that point. If you do have any thoughts or questions, we always love to hear from you guys, and you can leave us a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370, or you can always hit us up on Instagram. And I know we mentioned a lot of podcast episode and books in this episode, and we will put links to those in the show notes, which you can find at insideoutmoney.org. Okay, Happy New Year, Greg. Thanks.
Happy New Year.
Yeah,
this was fun.
Here's to an awesome 2025. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Inside out. Inside out of here. Can we start that now? No. It's only Liz that'll do that with me. Okay, bye-bye.
We're going round and round.